Tony, so you own a few nightclubs, right, in Miami, I think. Are you going to be hosting any networking events that Atif and I could go to?
All my things are exclusive, You can't just have any guy just come to a nightclub and just have fun time, You need to know who you're talking about.
Well, I'm not just any guy, I'm apparently the man. I'm the sexy guy.
I don't know about you, sexy or not sexy. I don't know who the hell you are.
Atif hasn't told you about me. I'm the sexy guy.
Who the hell is this guy?
Atif.
You will not come to my club, man. If I see you outside my club, you're gonna get it,
Yeah, really? Okay, bring it on. Welcome to episode 32 of the Tailoring Talk Show with me, your host, Roberto Revilla. I'm a bespoke tailor, menswear designer, and owner of Roberto Revilla London suit and shirt makers. This is the podcast where you drop in for the threads, but often leave with something quite unexpected. If you haven't already, please support the show by subscribing. It's free. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, I'd really appreciate your feedback in the form of a rating and a review. Today, I'm joined by someone I always love spending time with. Download figures suggest that you love spending time with him too. He's fast becoming a Tailoring Talk regular, along with his alter ego, Tony Montana. He's the owner of Zebra Home Cinema, the go-to guy for all your high-end audio and visual home entertainment needs. Yes, it is the sound doctor, Dr. Atif Ghaffar. Atif, how are you?
I'm very well. I feel so honoured. This is the fourth podcast we're doing together, and I feel like I'm wanted.
Yeah, you've been on over 10% of episodes. That's crazy.
It is. And we've spent quite a bit of time together. We've gone on some really cool excursions. And obviously we're going to talk about what we've been doing recently, but over to you.
Yeah, well, I think last episode we were together, we were talking about our networking misadventures back in early December, late November. And just to refresh the memory of our listeners, basically, I'm not a networking type person. Atif thought that I did because for some reason he thinks I'm like such a cool dude. And we ended up at a lovely art gallery, and it was a hosted event, and I basically didn't want to talk to anybody. I just wanted to look at the pictures. Yeah, there we go. But since then, last episode, I had an amazing guest, Tyler Foley, who was a former actor. He is still acting because he's got a new gig starting next month. But for all intents and purposes, former actor, Hollywood stuntman, turned entrepreneur and coach. And Tyler, that episode I really enjoyed so much, and I've actually already listened back to it twice, plus obviously editing, and I'm going to listen to it again. And it's just one of those great podcast episodes where you just feel like you need to have a pen and paper and you want to make notes because there was just so much value in it. Which also begs a question as to, how much value people get out of the episodes we've done together because, Anyway, sorry. But you listened to it almost after it went out and messaged me right away. So you really had a good time with it, didn't you?
I've got to say, I think to date, that's probably my favourite podcast I've heard. The interview is brilliant. And Tyler, just the way he speaks, his dynamism and his incredible experience. Just when you think you've heard all of it and you've really absorbed all of it, suddenly we start talking about his role as a stuntman and falling out of windows 20 feet up and things. And you're thinking, this is just brilliant. Let's not try this at home, but it's still absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. And it's to be fair, we could have actually done with that episode before we went to that event. But I think you obviously took a lot away from it, from, in terms of the presenting yourself, having an impact when you're meeting people for the first time, how to connect with people, and so on. So this actually, so we had, I wanted to just talk about some events that we've both been involved with recently. I mean, you've been to a few things, haven't you? Looking at your Instagram stories and so on. So you've had a few awards and so on. What have you been up to?
So, I mean, my brother-in-law, he tends to go to a lot of awards events. He's quite an ambitious and well-established business person in Birmingham. So he runs a Motorserve UK, which sells cars, and they do car servicing. And he's very well established in the community. So it's really through him that I was invited to quite a few networking events. And then I went off on my own, trying to seek out what sort of things are going on in London, and I joined a Small World networking group, and I'm always trying to sort of seek events where there's always a potential of meeting like-minded individuals or people who may have a similar client base to myself. It doesn't always go as successfully as I plan, or I don't always meet the sort of people I'm trying to meet, but I think there's a balance in terms of expectations and managing sort of disappointment, if you want to call it that. But after hearing the podcast with you and Tyler, I think if I'd been armed with that sort of knowledge, I probably would have planned my networking events sort of a lot more strategically and got a lot more out of them, and avoided certain, how can we put it, awkward situations, or maybe made more of a particular event than I had done. But that was incredibly useful. And for anyone who's looking to go to sort of networking events, I highly recommend that you listen to the podcast between Tyler and yourself. It's invaluable information.
Yeah, totally. I mean, Tyler does talk about intent, and when you're invited to an event or you're looking to go to an event, it's kind of knowing really what you're going to get out of it. And it's always good to have some intelligence beforehand about the type of people that are going to be there and so on. So I want to talk about 3 events in particular. So one that I missed, one that we both went to, and then one that you missed. So first of all, you were going to a Small World event that was being held at the Bulgari Hotel in Knightsbridge, and I was down to go to that with you, but unfortunately the lead up to that, I think it took place on a Thursday night, and the Wednesday I had worked from 4 a.m. all the way through till near 10:30 at night. And then on the Thursday, I had a very, very early start as well. And I was just absolutely exhausted. I was completely run into the ground. And I just knew that I wasn't going to be able to... I mean, to give you an idea, on the Wednesday evening, my last appointment was at a client's home in Hampstead. And I got there. It was raining. So I got there completely bedraggled on my Vespa, sort of dragged myself up Heath Street, Hampstead Hill. Got into his house, went up the stairs, and then I just collapsed on his sofa. And he felt so sorry for me. He just straight away ordered dinner for me because I hadn't eaten all day either. I'd grabbed like an energy bar or something running out of the house at 4:30 in the morning. So I knew that going to a networking event when at this time I'd still not spoken to Tyler yet. So I'm still Roberto from event that we went to in November, very introverted, doesn't want to talk to anybody, all that kind of stuff. And I couldn't do it. And I'm so sorry because, I mean, forget about who I might have met there. I always love hanging out with you, and I've always wanted to see that place as well. So anyway, over to you. How was it?
So I'd heard about a Small World through a dear friend of mine, Vincent Corver from Zurich. And he organises quite a few private events where he plays Steinway & Sons piano and has 3 or 4 systems at home, and organises private events for potential clients to come along. And he suggested that I join this thing, and it seemed quite interesting where you can, depending where you are in the world, choose your city and then see what sort of events are taking place. And I think what I found initially quite interesting was there's plenty of
So the reason Asif's laughing, because I might have just cut that out, but we just had a massive bark. So once again, their 32 episode unbeaten run is still going. My flipping dogs have got involved.
You know what?
I'm so
no,
sorry.
No, they've got personality.
That was a loud one, wasn't it?
What on earth is that? I thought you've got an earthquake going on.
Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, so what was potentially interesting was the fact that a lot of these events are held in, quite nice venues in and around London. And I thought this was potentially be quite a good networking opportunity to meet the sort of individuals I want to connect with. So I went with a bunch of friends, and we'd organised dinner beforehand. And again, it was one of those... the Bulgari Hotel's gorgeous. It was really, really nice. And they've got a private cinema downstairs, which I didn't get to see, but I would have loved to have taken a peek and see what all that was about. But again, it is quite a trendy, quite a cool place. And then, again, it's one of those awkward moments where sort of random people turn up. And on the app, you can actually see who's going. So you can sort of do a little bit of research and some diligence as to who's going to be there, who you'd like to try and meet. And then it's a bit of an awkward situation where you're thinking, is that person on the app? And I don't quite recognise this person who's walked in, and I'm not really sure. And again, it's one of those awkward moments where you just go to be, hello, I'm so-and-so. And so you end up just sort of talking to your friends. Luckily, I met a guy, a really cool guy. He's a lawyer, and he's a musician called Colin Tyler. Got chatting to him, and then found out that he writes his own songs. He's got his own studio, so I had a bit of banter with him. Mm-hmm. And I listened to some of his live streaming when he performs songs. And he's a great songwriter. Really, really like his stuff. And one day I listened to his stuff on the Steinway system at home. So meeting random folk like that can be quite interesting. But again, it's I think if it was a real trek to drive 2 hours into London, do the networking event, have dinner, drive back, we were shattered the next day. I think if you live in London and if you're looking for sort of new friends or to go on social activities, then I think it's probably a really, really cool thing to do. But otherwise, I think there's probably more practical sort of networking events that you can engage with. So I think if you turned up, it would have been cool. You obviously would have dressed very well, and we would have had a bit of banter and a few laughs. But then I probably would have organised that privately with you anyway.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Because I did do my homework beforehand as well, and I just sort of pinned a couple of people whose profiles look quite interesting that I thought I might want to connect with and talk to. But I think the environment has got to be kind of set up in that way as well. And if it's kind of like... It sounds like it felt like you kind of turned up to someone else's party that you were kind of loosely invited to, and it was a little bit orcs.
That's a very good way of describing it.
Any Lord of the Rings fans think I'm talking about orcs, but I'm not. I mean, awkward. So, yeah. Okay. So then we both went to... this last week. So we're recording on the 27th of February, 2022. It's a Sunday. So on Wednesday evening, we met up in Marylebone. And we went to Steinway Hall in Marylebone Lane, which is where they have all of... Steinway basically have their piano showroom and their demo room and so on. And I was really excited because... I built my business in and around that Marylebone area, and over the last nearly 20 years, I know I don't look that old, I have walked past that place almost every single day, but I've never ever been in. So it was kind of an honour to sort of step through the doors onto that hallowed turf. And I mean, their Steinway pianos are beautiful. Never mind the sound that they make. They're just pieces of art. And that translates into the stuff that they've done with Lingdorf Audio, with the Steinway Lingdorf speaker systems, which again are, some of the most beautiful pieces of technical kit that I think exist on planet Earth. So the event was centered around Vincent Corver, your friend from Zurich, who's a pianist, he's a musician, a composer. I think it's fair to say he's not, although he's probably classically trained, he's not a classical pianist. He's very experimental, and the event was hosted by Steinway, Lingdorf Audio, and Samsung UK. So they had a whopping great big 8K television screen, which had like a time-lapse video that had been put together for this of different beautiful landscapes around the world. And then Vincent was going to be playing on a Steinway piano that he had already sort of put in some sort of composition before, and the thing could play itself. And then he was going to be playing on top of that. So he was effectively playing with 4 hands. And this was then piped through a Steinway Lingdorf model O, B, A, C, F, D. See, I was right. And I can never remember which ones are which. But they're the really big, I mean, these
D
things
for the
are
daddy.
like 6 foot. Yeah. I mean, they're really tall. They're what they're like 1.92 meters off the ground. Yeah, I mean, really, really big. So it was set to be a really interesting evening. So we arrived, and I think I did all right that night. I think I was better there. It was a much smaller setting though. So I got to meet everyone that had come over from Denmark from Lingdorf Audio. And then Peter Lingdorf himself was there, which was awesome. And then I got to meet Vincent Corver, shook hands with him. He's really tall. And I didn't even see him coming. It was like, so I got kind of talking to the Lingdorf guys, and that was quite easy for me to break the ice because I just started banging on about their systems and how excited I was about them and how much I loved them, and then told them about that demo day that we did and how that episode was our most successful, most downloaded episode of Tailoring Talk ever. And then Vincent kind of snuck up on me while I was talking to, he's a composer, violinist, David Ramiel. I was talking to David Ramiel from Brussels, and Vincent Corver just snuck up behind me and sort of, put a hand on my shoulder and then introduced himself. And I was like, oh my God, you're like really tall. And he shook my hand, but then he shook my hand, and then as he was kind of greeting me, and he shook my hand and just held it really firmly. And then under normal circumstances, it went past the point of being uncomfortable. Do you know what I mean? But then this really weird paradox happened where I was kind of like, my British reservedness was getting uncomfortable with like the fact that my hand had been in his hand for like so long. But then it kind of morphed into, I kind of didn't want to let his hand go. So I'm recording this and Carolina's just walked past me and she's just given me the weirdest look. I think I'm going to get it after this. Not get it. I'm going to... Anyway, God, this is going wrong. I just got back from a run before recording this, okay? I'm tired. So, yeah, and then I kind of didn't want him to ever let go. So I felt like I was gripping talent. Do you know what I mean? And I wanted some of it to transfer to me. Because I'm not that talented, am I? So yeah, anyway, and that was great. And then, I met some other interesting people there as well. One of them's going to be on the podcast in a couple of weeks.
Okay. Nico, the co-founder for the perfume company.
That's it. The Bespoke Fragrances from Switzerland, the former banker. So he's up for anything. Actually, he's that sounded so wrong. But he's going to be on the King. Carolina's just looking at. Sorry, this is the worst episode of Tailoring Talk ever already. I'm going to call it. And we haven't even had Tony Montana on yet. It was a really, really good evening. I had such an amazing time. How about you?
The evening was quite extraordinary. It's one of those things that you mentioned before. You may see Steinway and Sons pianos on TV or in films, and it's iconic. But to actually walk into the showroom, it's one of those situations where you don't just walk into the Steinway and Sons showroom and think, "Oh, I'm just going to have a bit of a play with the pianos and start." You just don't walk in and do that. So to have the opportunity where you're invited by the sales team, where the CEO is present, and you turn up and you can see the pianos and you see the the extraordinary technology that stereo is. When you mentioned about the piano playing itself, I did a few Instagram stories saying that isn't this the most splendid jukebox you've ever seen in the world, where the piano is literally playing by itself your favourite songs or compositions from pianists that have actually recorded for the stereo. That in itself was an extraordinary experience. But to have Vincent Corva, as you say, play experimental sort of atmospheric tracks with the images on the huge screen, and then the Steinway Model D speakers with a backing track, it was a really intimate experience for, only 25, 30 guests. And I think, and to meet the heads of the technology, to actually meet Peter Lingdorf himself was just extraordinary. And I think it was one of those things where, because people sort of already knew one another, to have personal invitations and to make those introductions, that it felt like this is a really special gathering. We had a lot more opportunity to actually talk to one another and learn and gain from one another, and also for sort of potential collaborations. So I think it was a fantastic event. And one of those things that you weren't really quite sure what to expect, but you knew it was going to be special, but maybe you weren't sure how special it would be until the end of the evening.
Yeah, totally. And then it was really interesting because for me, what I'm realising when I go to these things, and in fact, actually when I'm in any environment where it's not, people aren't meeting me because, they're there to get clothes and get measured up and so on. They don't know what I do. It's, you're with a bunch of people, whatever. But the interesting thing I find is that after you kind of do initial introductions, and I don't say, hi, I'm Roberto Revilla from Roberto Revilla London, I'm a tailor. I just say, hi, I'm Roberto, or I'm Bobby, or whatever. And eventually, obviously, because then I'll start asking them questions about what they do and so on. And then eventually they will ask me the inevitable, and what do you do? What brings you here? And obviously everyone there pretty much was connected with music or Steinway or Lingdorf in some way, or Vincent. And obviously I wasn't. So as soon as I said, well, actually, how a lot of guys either don't like shopping for clothing or they just find it really difficult to find stuff that fits them. I make clothes. I solve those problems. I'm a tailor. And then it's like they look at me and they stand back and the penny drops and they look me up and down. They're like, I mean, you made me feel really self-conscious when I got there.
In a good way, I hope.
Yeah, well, I mean, you looked really good because you'd made a lot of effort. You're wearing a really nice three-piece with, a knit tie and all of that. And I was pretty much wearing the same thing. But then you kind of looked like I'd taken the jam right out of your donut when I turned up. Because you were sort of preening yourself there. And then I walked up and said hi. And then you turned around and you were just like, I'm just going to go home now. I didn't look that much better than you. I'm going to put it up on the Instagram. That's at Tailoring Talk Podcast, people. Follow me on Instagram, please. I'll put it up on the Instagram feed and everybody can have a little gander and a little vote, but I don't think I look that much better than you.
No, dude, you looked incredible. It's one of those moments where you imagine it's a TV episode, and you're there mingling with guests, and you've made an effort. You think you've dressed pretty dapper, and then suddenly walks in the dude, and then the camera pans to the shoes, and then goes up the suit, and looks at various details. You looked fantastic, and I think coming back to the whole thing about turning up to networking events and things. Look, you're there to make an impression. And you jokingly said, we were talking about what we're going to wear and things. And you sort of jokingly said, well, look, you're not, I'm just going to look awesome. You're not going to look as good as me, but this is what I'd suggest.
It was when you were asking me if you should wear a tie or not.
And so when you walked in, I thought, this just looks awesome. And it's about making those impressions that, you look like you've made an effort, however easy or difficult it was for you, but you've made the impression, and it's long-lasting. People are going to know that guy dressed like the Max, he's made an impression. And any sort of TV show you're talking about, particularly where guys are wearing suits, men and women dressing up, take Suits as an example. Harvey Specter is Harvey Specter because he looks like Harvey Specter. And what does that mean? Well, you look at the tailoring, you look at the suits that he's wearing, And purposely, all the other actors are not given clothes that look like that on the show. So it's that impression that you make. So when you walked in, I thought, yeah, this guy's my friend.
What, in a very proud way? Or
Absolutely. It was an absolute pleasure. And it's so, and you feel good that, my friend's a tailor. Look at how he dresses. And it gives that impression. And I think it's incredibly important, particularly when you're going to something that's fairly auspicious. I think it's good. You've made an effort, you've made an impression, and it should reflect your character.
I think it's important, especially when you're a little bit more introverted like I am, to look, I know I always say I just threw this on, and it's not true. So, truth time now for us and our listeners. But I do think about what I'm going to wear, and I look at potentially where I'm going, my audience for the day and so on, and I do dress accordingly. And especially where it's an environment where I know that I'm going to feel quite uncomfortable, I will obviously make even more effort and be very careful with my choices, because what I want to try and do is compel people to come up to me and actually make the first move, like want to come up to me. And generally, if I'm in a room and there are a lot of the other guys aren't going to be as well dressed. They might be wearing suits, but they're usually not tailored, or they're tailored really badly. By the way, you looked fantastic that evening. You look at some of the photos that I took of you. Again, I'll put them up on the podcast Instagram, but you look so good. You really look so well put together. You look like someone that people would want to go and talk to and be hanging out with. And so basically that's what I try to do. It's to compel people to want to, either come up to me or at least look at me from across the room and wonder, maybe ask someone else about me or something. Mm-hmm. The problem then is that I then go into internal mode and I don't actually look at what's going on, because your buddy Imran was saying, like, I had people looking at me from across the thing and I didn't even realise. But the way you dress can do that, I think when people meet me maybe the first time, their impression of me is that I'm a lot more confident than I actually am. But that's what fascinates me about clothes, that, you dress in a certain way, you can do certain things with clothes that will change people's perception about you. And that's what I try to do for my clients, as one of the questions I always ask them when I start working with them the first time for day-to-day attire is, how do you want the world to see you? Mm-hmm. How do you either want to project your personality or distort it?
I mean, that's quite interesting.
For me, it's about distortion.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It's interesting when you talk about the inward, and sometimes how your clothing may not reflect the inward state, but it's using clothing and fashion as a particular statement. You sent me a video for one of your clients who I think recently got married, and it was their sort of trailer for their wedding video.
We won't say who it was because I actually haven't asked permission to use that yet.
Oh, right, okay. So
I've got the guy's details. I need to WhatsApp him, but I don't know if there's going to be a licensing deal. But I was going to post it on Instagram, and then I just thought I'd better just check, and I did, and I need to get in touch with the videographer. But anyway, it looked like the trailer for an American reality show. It did. It was amazing.
And I just thought, testament and congratulations to you just to be associated with I dressed the groom. And when you watch the video, it's like, wow.
He looks so good, right?
He's a handsome guy, but the suit he's wearing, he just looks stunning. And you think, wow, now that is incredible. And if your remit is, listen, I want you to design me something to make me not just look, but I want to feel $1 million. I want to feel on top of the world. I just want to feel good about myself. That the power of how you dress someone to translate into that, I think, is incredible. And as I said, when you walked into the Stoneman Sons showroom, I thought, look, the pianos are gorgeous, but hey, the limelight has entered onto this guy's walked in, and he looks impeccable. And it's a testament to what you do. So I have to congratulate you for that.
Yeah, and it's really funny because I think that's what you've just said there probably reinforces the way that I see the penny dropping for people when they then actually find out what I do after we've been hanging out for 10 minutes and they're still wondering, they haven't been able to ask the question because I've just been talking, and then they ask it and then I tell them and then they're like, oh, okay, now everything makes sense.
And I think coming back to Tyler's podcast with you, the whole thing about the introductions and networking, isn't that such a powerful moment? The fact that you've not had to introduce yourself, this is what I do, and are you interested, and blah, blah, blah. You know, you've already got the person's interest at the beginning, and they don't even know what you do yet. And then it's just layer upon layer. And then when the penny drops, it has a lot more impact.
The thing people find most interesting when you're in a conversation with them is when they're able to talk about themselves, because that's what we all love to do. Mm-hmm. We're human beings. We're our own favourite subject. So that's why I kind of... It's partly because, and I talked about this probably in the episode with Tyler, that I like asking questions because it gets them talking and takes the pressure off me to talk about myself. I can't remember what the point of was what I was about to say, but you get it. Yeah, I can't remember. It's just gone out of my head. Problem is, I've got... Now my cat started. This is ridiculous, honestly. Everything's going out the window now. Now my cat started. The dogs have now settled down because I was glaring at them earlier, and I think they've got the message. But yeah, now that the cat is threatening to launch straight over from the kitchen counter to the table where my iPad is. So this could go really wrong any second.
This should be quite amusing.
Yeah, so I think it also helped going to that event off the back of that Tyler episode and having listened to it as an audience member myself and taken so many notes from that. It really gave me a lot of confidence. Have you found the same since, that you've been able to take some of those lessons and actually put them into practice in some of the events that you've been to?
So I think having listened to it first, there's a few new sort of concepts in there. So again, like yourself, I'm going to have to revisit and hone in on some of the more pertinent points, and then take that on board before I go to another random sort of networking event. But he was very, very charismatic, really... really on the ball. Everyone should listen to that podcast. Coming back to the event that I didn't go to, it'd be really interesting to hear your experiences.
Oh, well, so this was the following evening. So I joined Founders Club in December. And basically Founders Club is, it'll eventually be capped, but it's a club full of specially selected, like-minded kind of entrepreneurs. So some of the kind of patrons or ambassadors to the club are kind of renowned Asian businessmen like Atul Couture of Benares, and I can't remember his first name, but Mr. Singh, who owns like a bunch of fancy hotels in central London and so on. And then the membership group are made up of basically self-starters, entrepreneurs who are at different stages of their journeys. It wouldn't surprise me if by this time in about a year, I'll have had almost every single one of them on this podcast. But Founders Club was founded by actually a very old friend of mine. We were best friends at infant and primary school, Kalpesh Patel, or at Mr. KP36 on Insta. And Kalps is a marketer, and a brilliant one at that. And I mean, he is what he doesn't know about marketing, you could write on the back of your little finger. He's absolutely incredible. And he and we lost touch when we left primary school, pretty much, because then we kind of went separate ways, education-wise and in life. And we kind of reunited probably about 4 or 5 years ago when I met someone through someone else who was running Porsche Centre in Reading. And he said, there's someone that you should actually meet at Asian Wealth magazine. And, you know, he kind of reminds me, you remind me of each other for some weird reason I can't put my finger on. So he set up a meeting, and it was at the Savoy. And I was sat there waiting, and Kalps walked in. We locked eyes, and obviously recognised each other immediately, because even though 25 odd years had passed, your eyes don't change, right? Apparently, I still look the same anyway. Just I had hair back then. It's like Calps, and he's like, yeah. It was like, Bobby. I was like, yeah. It's like, what the hell are you doing here? It's like, I think I'm meant to be meeting you. And he's like, yeah, I'm meeting you as well. It's like, wow. And then we just hugged, and we kind of kept in touch since. We weren't able to do anything while Calps was running Asian Wealth Mag, because I wasn't at the right stage in my journey. But Founders Club, he started last year, and I was just watching with interest because, it kind of coincided with you and I talking about, how we develop our businesses further, and, we need to sort of meet new people as much as we can and do all this networking stuff and so on. And, 2022 is going to be the year that we get out of our comfort zones and actually do those things. Especially for me, it's a huge deal because I just never have done those things before. And I just looked at what Celts was doing with Founders Club and looked at kind of, they've got about 120 members at the moment. And I just was looking through the roster of members, and I was just thinking, do you know what? These are all people I want to hang out with. So when, I messaged him, and then someone from the membership team got in touch with me before Christmas. And honestly, Atif, it was like a 15-second decision. I mean, normally I wouldn't join something like that without really carefully considering it for a length of time. But this was like, I want in. Do you know what I mean? I want to be hanging out with those guys and girls. So the Thursday night event was a sort of meet and greet, which was for members, but also some people who weren't members have been invited. There were people that just wanted to kind of see what the club was all about. And it was at the Mayfair Hotel bar. So the environment wasn't one that I'm entirely comfortable with, if I'm quite honest, because it was a roped off area of the Mayfair Hotel bar, and it was very loud, and it's a Thursday night in the West End. COVID restrictions have just been put in the bin a few days before. So it was back to normal. It was heaving, which was kind of really nice to see in itself. But it's not an environment I feel comfortable in because, again, like the art gallery thing we went to in November, it was very loud, and I really do have problems hearing people. But from the moment I walked in, it also helped that I trod on someone's foot because I'm so clumsy. But I lost my voice by the end of my voice was going within 2 hours. I just spoke to and met so many people and just made so many great connections. And there were two large differences there. I think number one was that the people that were there, we were all part of the same thing. We were all members of this thing. And so, everyone was kind of just looking at each other, locking eyes, and then saying, hi, I'm Roberto. And then just getting into a conversation. And the natural thing was, how long have you been a member? And of course, the club's only been going for just over a year. So no one's really been a member for that long. But I was a baby because it was my first event. And then KP came over and we hugged. And then he's already been thinking about my business. So he'd already earmarked specific people that he wanted me to make sure I went and spoke to. So he was very, very good at giving me instructions and saying, you need to speak to, or getting some of the other members and saying to them, can you, if he saw me talking to someone that knew someone he wanted me to connect with, like, for example, there's a photographer, Rory, that he really wants me to start doing some stuff with. And so I was talking to Mira, who's an amazing makeup artist, and Mira works with Rory. And so KP sort of was talking to someone else, and then he caught me and Mira talking to each other. So he sort of quickly dashed over and he said, Mira, take Bobby and go and introduce him to Rory, like now. Because this is something that we're going to be talking about tomorrow, because I was meeting up with him the next day. Blah, 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 blah. But, it was great. I mean, I've made some really great connections. I mean, again, it's people that I know that I'm going to see again because we're part of this same thing. And it's just people who kind of get it. They get the entrepreneur self-starter struggle. And some of them are super successful. They've sold businesses, started new businesses, they're running multiple business, and some of them they've only just started in the last year or two, so they're kind of on the way up. Some people who are in the middle, like me, that have hit a plateau and kind of aren't sort of sure what numbers in the combination lock or which side of the Rubik's Cube I need to put together next so that I can then unlock the next level. But it just feels like such a nurturing environment. And there were people from all over the UK. I mean, one guy I was talking to was a property investor from Manchester who also, his other business was in Asian jewellery, but bespoke. And I think that's a family business that's been sort of passed down through a couple of generations, and now it's with him. But he'd come all the way down from Manchester. So there were people from all over the country as well. I thought it would be a really, really good environment for you. So yeah, I had just the best. I had the best time. Like, I meant to go for like an hour, and then I was just gonna sneak out, but I couldn't sneak out. And I was there in the end. I was there for about 2.5 hours. I lost track of time. I could have stayed longer, and I couldn't sneek out. It was one of those where I had to go and say goodbye to the people that I'd been chatting to, I'll see them again, but I made a point of then writing to the people that I'd had long conversations with the next morning to say thank you. It's really good to meet you, and to connect with them on LinkedIn and all that kind of stuff. But I think there's going to be quite a few people I'll be collaborating with out of that, not necessarily as my client, but certainly they're in, like Rory, photography, etc. That's something that I've really got to look at quite carefully for the business. There was another guy I met who's in social media marketing. Another one that I met who's a videographer, which is weird because I've been approached by a dozen videographers in the past week. But everyone's got their own kind of. It's like tailoring and everything else, right? Everybody's got their own way of doing things, and when you look at their profiles, I can quickly eliminate a lot of them because it's not right for what I envisage, etc. Anyway, I'm rambling on. I'm so sorry. Just proving my point from earlier that humans like talking about themselves. But yeah, it was really, really good. And I think the fact that I've been banging on about it for so long means that it was genuinely
really good.
Amazing. I had such a great time.
I mean, that's a sign of a really successful event. And there's a few key elements that you mentioned there. Your host, who had that nurturing sort of personality, you're taking you and actually taking the time to understand your business and out of respect, introducing to key people that could help you out. I think that's a really, really important thing. And again, it's part of a global supportive, how can I put it? I'll have to edit this bit in a bit, but it's having it's having that sense of togetherness where you're not just in it for yourself. I get a huge buzz from getting other people to network with one another. And if I'm thinking this person should be that person, they could really do something quite creative. That gives me a buzz. And sometimes it's not all about what am I going to get out of this. It's just that those elements that something may be fruitful later on in life, but you are part of something bigger than that. And I think that's the key element. Yeah.
It's, some of the conversations I was having, because, you talk about why you joined with people that you meet. And I was really honest with them. I was just like, look, do you know what? I'm at the stage now where, I think we've got the branding right and our service offering has never been better because we've expanded the range significantly because of COVID and all of that. But the problem now is that the weight of everything is on my shoulders. I'm doing every job in a business that normally at the size we're at and the turnover that we do would possibly be somewhere between 3 to 7, 8, 9, 10 employees. Yet I've got everything on my shoulders, and obviously Carolina with the other half that she does. And something's got to give. I'm getting burnt out. And also the nature of our business with the pandemic has changed slightly as well. The pandemic has adjusted things. And I'm trying to put some new order into what I do, and because I'm so busy dealing with current reality, which is I'm in my business and my business is literally enveloping me, like I've got my head is underwater. It's very difficult for me to get my head above water to really see what's going on and to actually run my business rather than constantly I'm working in it. And part of that also is I'm at the stage now where I know that I need to set very clear boundaries between me and my clients. And the problem with that is that, again, it's a sort of it's a paradoxical situation, if that's the correct word, I don't know. But, you know, my whole business has been about tailoring for each individual that I look after and having a policy of not saying no if I can help it. But in order to grow, I now need to start saying no to people. So I don't work weekends. I don't do Fridays in town because Fridays are my catch-up day and my day to run the business and to meet with other founders to, do all of that nurturing stuff and share ideas and learn and educate myself and so on. I need to reduce the home visits I'm doing. I shouldn't be doing home visits for less than a certain value, and so on and so forth. There are certain clients that I probably will need to let go sooner rather than later. But when you're the thing about Founders Club, and I'm sure there are many other clubs that are very similar to it, is it's just really nice when you're on this journey. It can be very, very lonely, and it's just nice to have other people around you that get it. And that was one of the things that was coming up in conversation where I was saying, this is the stage that I'm at, and I don't know quite where to go next. And at the same time as I said this, the other person I was talking to basically said exactly the same words at the same time. I need help. I need help. And because everybody's in the same boat. And that actually, the weight that has been crushing my shoulders for so long got alleviated a little bit on Thursday night. Because I suddenly realised I was in a room full of people, bar one or two exceptions, because you always get one or two. They'd just been at the bar very early. I knew that I was in a room full of people who were going to help me to potentially move forward to the next level.
I think that's incredibly important, and it's surrounding yourself, whether it's at an event like that and in your personal life and in business in general, just filter out the crap. There's so many people who are negative or jealous, and they'll bring you down. And I think as time goes on, both in life and through business, you start becoming a bit more aware of these type people and certain situations where you can really start making decisions as to, you're positive in my life and you're going to be a positive impact on me, whether it's my business life or family, whereas, this person's a complete distraction, very negative, and they're going to bring me down. And I think getting the balance right between your productivity in business and your personal life, I think it's so important. And a lot of us make the mistake of ignoring that aspect because they're so hungry to get the business to grow, whereas in fact, because they're losing themselves in that it's those elements that make up your personality and make up your passion that start becoming affected. And when that happens, it'll ultimately have a negative impact on your business. So getting that balance is so important.
Yeah, and a lot of us, especially someone like me, is from a sales background. I remember one of the companies I used to work for used to always talk about sharpening your axe or sharpening your sword, and taking the time to do that out of your business. Because if you were chopping a tree with a blunt axe, you could be there forever and you wouldn't get any result. Whereas if you just taken some time out to sharpen your axe, you could probably fell that tree in a matter of minutes. And it's so true with when you're running your own business and you're on your own, taking that time out is really, really important. I mean, I was saying to Kelps on Friday morning, because we were just going through my business, and I was just like, do you know, I almost feel like I know what I need to do. I've got that list, but I almost feel like I need to shut my business down for like 2 to 4 weeks and just take myself out of it. Just shut it and say, sorry, like I can't serve anyone until next month, and just take the time out to do that work. And I don't know if, because you only started your business at the beginning of this hell show called COVID, I don't know if you're even at that kind of feeling at that stage yet, but it is, if you're not, it is going to come.
Yeah, I think I'm probably a few steps behind that. I'm at this moment in time where we're having a steady influx of inquiries. They're manageable. I've got a wonderful associate who does my design and installation work, Kane Pritchett from Vertus Integration, and his partner Andy. And they're absolutely brilliant. And we're at a stage where we can manage the workload. You know, I'm still working my GP sessions, balancing family life. All of it's all sort of working okay. But I'm very aware of the situation where suddenly the inquiries may start getting ridiculous and we start falling behind on actually delivering installations. And I think it's at that point where you just have to be acutely aware of how the situation turns and being able to get the support and help that you need before you get overwhelmed.
So I wasn't laughing at you. It's just my the Bengal cat's just, it is like a zoo in my house, right?
It's wonderful.
It's just one after the other. So nobody can see this, but my Bengal cat Jessie's just literally just walked in front of the camera.
How
so I
cute.
picked her up and she's just jumped onto my shoulder. So she's just kind of resting. This could go either way, Atif. Either she's just going to sit here calmly until we finish this episode off.
Absolutely.
Or she's going to rip my ear off. So it could go either way. But no,
and I think along this journey, half it's you got to have fun. You've got to enjoy what you're doing, and sometimes some of these networking events, I don't take them seriously. I go in, I like to dress up, like to make a bit of an effort because it makes me feel good, and you never know who you're going to meet.
Yeah.
And part of it's having fun. So if you can take a comrade along with you, it helps break the ice. But you're there to sort of enjoy the event, enjoy the evening. A friend of mine, Naeem Hashemi, him and his partner own some contemporary furniture shops. They're having a new opening in Birmingham in the Jewellery Quarter in a couple of weeks. And as a favour to him, I said, you know what, for your launch party, I'll DJ for you. That's something that I find fun. It's a hobby of mine. But it's my contribution to making that launch party a success. And, I know a few interior designers. I'd like to meet more interior designers. I'd like to meet potential similar clients who I know are going to be at that event. So it's all about what can you contribute to another person's event sometimes, rather than turning up and saying, well, what am I going to get out of this? And it all helps.
I think any of those situations, your intent is so important, and you hit the nail on the head there. And I think Tyler may have touched on it, but it's certainly something that I truly believe in. There was one guy on Thursday night in the Mayfair Hotel who was coming to check the club out and to see whether it's something he wanted to join. And it was an elderly guy, and he kind of was sort of looking around. It turns out, actually, he'd put his wine glass down and then one of the staff had taken it and he was looking for his wine. But he kind of sort of locked eyes with me and someone else that I was talking to. But naturally, I said to him, hi, how are you? I'm Roberto. This is whoever I was with. I think it was Bavik. And who's an amazing singer, by the way. This guy basically started to pitch. So he did something to do with Zoom, like the next level of Zoom calling and Teams calling with like interactive screens and stuff. But he actually had a binder and he said, well, let me show you what I do because it's easier. And then he literally started to kind of pitch. And I didn't realize at first, but physically I took a step back from him. Now, the problem here is that I had a pillar behind me. So I didn't really have much stepping back. I mean, I literally became... Do you remember that video? What was it? Gotha or whatever. Someone that I used to know.
Yeah.
And... Dun, 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 dun,
Brilliant dance
in the
track.
video? Yeah, and he blends into the kind of wall. And because it's about the deterioration of a relationship. I mean, this wasn't a relationship, obviously, but I'm just saying I felt like I was in that video because I was part of this, but literally within 5 minutes, I was part of this damn pillar. I'd backed into it so far. And then I was looking around and I was like, sugar, it's my first event. I wish I knew people here. Because like, if you'd been with me, I would have been texting you, like, do you know what I mean? Like, hey, Siri, tell Atif, get me the F out of here. Like, come and rescue me. But he kept leaning in. So the more I moved back, he wouldn't leave that space alone. He kept coming into me, stepping into me. And I was just like, and then I was like, oh, maybe your wine glass is over there, or maybe you could just go and get go, like, leave me alone. Someone, and then in the end, I think it was Ruchira, she came and rescued me in the end, or it might have been Mira, but someone rescued me, and then KP cut in and said, I need you to go and meet Rory. And I was like, thank God for that, because in normal circumstances, like, oh, you want me to meet someone? I'm so nervous. But I didn't have time. Like, the pain of staying there was less than me having to go and introduce myself to someone because I'd just been told to.
Oh, wow.
Blimey. But anyway, the point is, I think if you're going to any kind of networking event, the worst thing you can do is start selling.
Yeah.
It's the worst thing you can do. You know, you kind of, through the course of conversation, it will come up what you do. You might ask the other person what brings them there and what they do. And if what they do is something that you're interested in, then you can ask them more about it. And if what you do is something that they're interested in, then they'll ask you more about it, and that's okay. But to step in on someone straight away after being introduced and to start pitching to them is a real turn-off. A real turn-off. And I think you're absolutely right. It's more important to go and just go with the intent of having a good time. And, you know, maybe you make some connections, maybe you don't. But the main thing is that you come away from there and say, at least I had a good time. Anything else is a bonus. And I think if you go in with that attitude, you will end up having a good time and you will actually make some really valuable connections.
I completely agree with you. And I think that's why when we were going to London, first thing we did was, you know what, book a place for dinner. Because if everything goes pear-shaped, you know what, at least we're going to enjoy food together.
You've got that. Yeah, exactly. That's it. So yeah. So no, it was good. I mean, the next morning, because it was London Fashion Week, there was a Founders Club breakfast for the fashion founders, which was only 5 of us. And that was really nice and intimate. And one of the ladies is a personal image consultant, which is perfect, you know, for me. Another one, she's just started her boutique actually 2 years running now, but she's got a ladies' boutique in Marylebone High Street. So I'm actually going to visit her on Tuesday. It's Hetal Patel, the owner of Vi, VAAI. You can check it out on Instagram. Her work is amazing. She just makes beautiful ladies' clothes. And Tash, I can't remember his real name, but his name's Tash. He's like a fashion consultant, and he's got his fingers in all sorts of pies. And but yeah, he's called Tash because of his tash, because he's got a really cool, you know, the whole full beard with the curly tash. Because then I said to him, "What's your real name?" And he told me it begins with A, but I couldn't remember. And then I was joking with him because I said, "Yeah, I'd have made that link eventually." But yeah, that was really good. It was a really good morning. We just had a really nice, intimate little time with like-minded people in the same industry, but doing things where we could probably all help each other out. So that was really cool as well. So yeah, you need to get in on this. We'll talk about it offline. I'm not going to accost you in front of a whole audience full of people. So you are going to be back. Do you know what? Actually, before that, Atif, I know you're going to agree with this, and then I can edit this out if you don't. But I think we're going to do something really special for Tailoring Talk listeners. So if you guys and girls, so you remember that Atif is involved with Steinway Lingdorf Audio Systems, and Miller and Kreisel, and all these other high-end audio-visual brands. So if you're curious about all these wonderful systems, I'm going to say that Atif is offering to host you and up to 5 guests for an exclusive day out at one of Zebra Home Cinema's demo rooms. There's one in Aston, up in the Midlands, and there's another one down in near Hampshire. I've been there. Where was it?
So the one in the West Midlands is in Sutton Coldfield, so in Little Aston.
Okay, well, yeah, same thing.
And then
north.
Up north, north of London. And then we have one of the finest demo facilities in the UK at Gecko Home Cinema in Thatcham.
Which is in Berkshire.
In Berkshire. We have a demo room in Cheltenham.
In Gloucestershire.
Yeah. And then we have access to some other absolutely superb demo facilities at Pulse Cinema and Habitech. There's quite a few places dotted, mainly in the southeast, where you've got just incredible home cinema facilities and media rooms. And get in touch and let's make it happen.
Yeah, so that's how we're going to do it, right? So you, up to 5 guests, exclusive day out at one of Zebra Home Cinema's demo rooms up and down the country. All you have to do is contact Atif directly at the following email address, Atif, that's ATIF, at zebrahomecinema.com, or follow and then drop him a direct message on Instagram at Zebra Home Cinema. And make sure you mention Tailoring Talk when you connect with him. Atif, thank you so much for joining me once again. Have you had a good time?
It's always a pleasure. We've got so much to discuss, and one podcast probably doesn't do it justice, and so I look forward to several more, sharing more experiences.
Yeah, definitely. You will, like James Bond, return to Tailoring Talk in the near future. Speaking of James Bond, you do not want to miss the next episode. It's a bumper review of the second Bond movie, From Russia With Love, as Philip Rahman and I continue the Tailoring Talk Bondathon. We're also joined by some very special guests for that episode, and it actually turns into a bumper one. So please remember to subscribe so you don't miss a thing. And I will see you on the next one.
Do people actually like the Tony Montana thing? Do we get any comments?
I think they do.